Hey YouTube, DDR Guy 300 here again, and I wanted to make my next discussion video kind of a recap, or readdressing the points that I had made before about how this whole War of the Spark Mythic Edition fiasco definitely falls, the responsibility definitely falls on the shoulders of Wizards of the Coast. Hasbro a little less so, but I will get into that. But this all this was prompted by a comment that one of my either a subscriber or a viewer had made to my initial reaction video to after Wizards had made tweets saying you're going to know if you've actually got the Mythic Edition or not, probably within the next 24 hours, and then me explaining my feelings on that whole situation of hey, there actually is only 12,000 and so on and so forth. So that prompted the thought process, as did Vintage MTG's video here about how he thinks people should stop blaming Wizards for the War of the Spark Mythic Edition mess, um, and how his argument is that Magic is on a bull market, so it's not their fault, which I'm going to get into because the fact of the matter is, Vintage MTG is completely wrong. Um, as I've said before, Wizards is completely at fault because they did not think the product through. They didn't when they were, sitting down trying to figure out what to put in the next Mythic Edition. They didn't think it through. They were instead just worried about kind of having this extra insurance policy to make sure they didn't have a repeat of the last one where it just sat around because no one wanted it. So what do? They put in Jace the Mind Sculptor and Ugin Spirit Dragon. Um, and they thought, on top of that insurance policy, they're also thinking, okay, instead of putting out 20,000 units again, we're going to only limit it to 12,000 units this time to make sure it sells out. So they got two insurance policies in place. All the while, they don't think anything about the actual contents that they've decided to put in their product. There's Jason Ugin and a relatively hyped Nicol Bolas Dragon God print from the War of the Spark set. And the reality is, you could have put Jason here and seven other crap planeswalkers, and it still would have sold out at 12,000 units. And the fact that I hear people, defending Wizards, granted, it's not a lot of people, but the idea that Wizards can be defended from this and that it's not their fault or it's not Hasbro's fault and really it's the fault of the people who are participating in the buyout or whatever it is you want to call this fiasco that just happened and the kind of people that were you know taking part in it. Um, it's completely on Wizards because again they didn't think the product through and they didn't think to themselves the kind of people that and the kind of money that a product like this was going to attract. You know, there's already been two runs of the Mythic Edition. The first one was botched because the website crashed and whatever the heck else happened. So there's already a limited kind of quantity available, and it's already become kind of a rare item because of that fact. Um, and you have money. You see the money that turns from this 260 $70 purchase when you count tax and everything. Um, and the investor type see, oh hey, it's worth you know over $600 now. We're going to be able to make over double our money back in about 6 months probably on this next product. And that's the kind of thought process that went into I feel the initial kind of buying wave of the last Mythic Edition that was just trash. That's sitting, on TCG Player for like 310 or something, or sitting on eBay for 325, whatever it is. That was the initial money that kind of was infused into there. It was the investor type money that just saw this as another Mythic Edition print that happened the same way as the first one, where you can, I guess at that point it was like 3 months after the fact, so it was, oh, look at this price tag, we can over double our money in just 3 months, so let's go do that. And that was part of that first purchasing wave, but um, when purchases started to slow, there wasn't a whole lot of investor money there because the people that were going after it for an investment type sake to flip and to make easy money, there wasn't many because those investment minded type people, but who were also um, somewhat averse in the Magic the Gathering game, realized this is not like the first box. This is trash. There's nothing really super good in here, and no one's going to go for it. So there was definitely a holdback on, do you put money in it or not? Um, and with this print, with the War of the Spark Mythic Edition, it was not the same at all. And there's going to be, you know, the most obvious factor is going to be this boy right here. Um, Jace the Mind Sculptor, probably the most iconic Planeswalker in MTG, probably next to Liliana the Veil. Um, and the fact that you were only going to print 12,000 of these, it was, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it was a no-brainer for those who had money, for those who had the network to get people to buy boxes on their behalf, like, Rudy for Alpha Investments, for example, although, quick ramble on that, he says he wasn't able to get any, which he's got a history of not really lying to us, but on this one, I kind of feel like he is. Like, I feel like he was smart enough to know that this was going to happen and to have the infrastructure in place to go ahead and go for it. I don't suspect I've talked about this, I think, in the video that I mentioned earlier, which I'll have a link to in the description, which was my, initial thoughts on Wizards releasing their statement of you'll find out if you get your boxes or not. So definitely go give that a listen. It's an interesting discussion. But I talk more about, Rudy and how I feel about that whole situation there. But back to the topic at hand. Wizards of the Coast created a situation that was going to attract investor money, that was going to attract people who were just going to get it to flip it, because they knew for a fact that this was going to hit astronomically high numbers. That 12,000 units were going to sell out, so fast. I talk about it in my other video. I was originally thinking worst case scenario, an hour it'll be sold out. Then I was thinking closer to release 15 minutes and it'll be sold out. And then because of that 15 minutes, I just said to myself, let me plan on 5 minutes sold out so that I can be extra cautious or extra on top of my game. And at the end of the day, I was able to get 2 orders through in that first 5 minutes, and they are confirmed. But the rest of them, after that, or even the ones that were like, you get it in the first 12,000, but they're forcibly canceled for stupid reasons. All those got canceled and stayed canceled. So, anyway, back to the point I'm trying to make is that Wizards of the Coast had such an unawareness of their own product that they created the situation that attracted the kind of people that went after the item, that went after the Mythic Edition, because 90% of the people that went after it were just going to flip it, because the pull of being able to turn money into more money is stronger than the pull of your community, is stronger than the pull of the Magic the Gathering player base. And that's why I think, it's like 90% of people that just went in to flip it, to make that easy money, to go after this surefire investment where I've said in my other video, where it is an investment that on the worst day possible has zero risk, where you're not going to get less than you put into the product. And as such, and that's the biggest thing, that's because that's what those are behaviors that the smart money follows, or maybe it's the other way around, where it's just the behavior of the smart money, where at the end of the day, it's one of the basics of investing is, am I going to, if I put money into, products A, B, or C, in what scenarios am I going to get less than what I put into it? And the answer for this one was none. So that was another group that it attracted, was just this was a very safe place to put capital. And the fact of the matter, the fact that Wizards of the Coast didn't think of that and didn't kind of adjust their strategy to account for that just shows how unaware of their product and the situation that Magic is in right now. That it just shows that they had no idea what they were doing. If you wanted to make a product that hyped War of the Spark, um, you could have left Jace out of this completely. Put some other Planeswalker in there, and you would have had Ugin and Nicol Bolas, and that's relevant to the War of the Spark storyline. And Ugin's a pretty big name print, anyways, because he's so much dang money. At least until we get like another kind of ultimate, or like another Masters, whatever the next reprint set's gonna be. Whenever we get Ugin, hopefully it's soon. Um, but you could have taken out Jace and put in something Karn from War of the Spark, let's say, or Teferi, one of the good rare planeswalkers that are in War of the Spark. You could have put that in there and had that hype planeswalker from War of the Spark in there in Jace's place, and this box still would have done really well. And you could have had 15,000, 20,000 units, and they probably would have sold out. Might have taken a day, maybe a few hours, but it would have sold out. But the fact that you put Jace and Ugin in here just creates the situation that I was explaining earlier, where it's going to attract the smart money more than the players, and as such, the smart money is going to get between the product and the players. Um, and I had said, I touched on before how it's less Hasbro's fault. It's more Wizards' fault, because at the end of the day, the catalyst that caused all of this was Wizards not thinking the product through. And, the secondary issue there, of Hasbro's technical issues of, their PayPal not accepting payments because of this influx of cash, or sales tax not being taken out for one reason or another, because of the two successful orders I had go through, one was sales tax, one wasn't, so go figure there. Those issues, you know, they wouldn't have been there as much if the product was more thought through. Yeah, there might have been still issues with, people initially coming in and buying, a ton, but it wouldn't have been to this, insane degree. So it's kind of hard. I guess the point that I'm trying to make here with the Hasbro situation is it's kind of difficult to blame, the mediary seller that Wizards decided to use when it's Wizards who didn't think it through and kind of realize, hey, we might need extra safeguards in place, or hey, we might need to change a few things. Because Hasbro's just, it's just they put it on their eBay page and that's it. The whole rumor that I heard about, Hasbro's automated relisting process, that's probably the biggest red flag. Where now that I'm saying it out loud, yeah, that's the biggest issue with the Hasbro page, because it's like that's the bare minimum you could have done, right? You could have thought it through, when eBay comes to Hasbro, or whatever rep they got to coordinate with, and say, hey, this is a limited edition 12,000 print run product. Someone somewhere in the room or in the building should have thought, well, how about that automated, relisting protocol we have active? Maybe not have it for this item, since it is a limited number print, huh? What a novel idea. But anyways, that's all I was trying to get out as far as Hasbro's blame and all this, because again, it all boils down to Magic not, or Wizards of the Coast not thinking it through and not realizing the kind of crowd it would attract. Because and here's the other thing. People, this is kind of relevant to the one comment that I had on my videos, but people like to get mad at and blame those participating in this, let's call it a buyout, and this investment frenzy, in this drive to just turn your money into more money rather than actually enjoying the product that's being, you know, created, sent out. Um, that's you can't. You're scapegoating the wrong crowd by just being upset and saying, it's the people, like myself, for example, who have, participated in this mentality of get as many as you possibly can, have other people help you out. Um, to be mad at those people is to be mad at the wrong thing, because again, Wizards not thinking the product through is what attracted the people it attracted and created the situation that did happen. And it had because the behavior is going to happen, regardless the behavior is not always the direct cause of the problem. You have to take a step back and look at what else could be the culprit. And in this case, the culprit was Wizards because, again, I've said I've got to stop saying this phrase, but again, they didn't think it through. So, you know, first of all, I wanted to touch on kind of apparently some people, had bots in place that bought these boxes for them. And I saw another, tinfoil hat theory where watch like a whole crap ton of these actually be shipped off to Wyoming addresses because apparently Wyoming doesn't have sales tax. So I guess that's how, the big time investors were trying to, keep their cost basis even lower by not having to pay any sort of sales tax. But man, like for example, what I did, and I said this in my response comment. For example, for what I did, which was just had a handful of people in my social circle ready to go at 3 p.m. Eastern time to try and get this thing if they could, and two of them being successful, me and another person. I look like a saint compared to some of these other people where they use just bots, literally, algorithmic machines that really because at least I'm playing fair, right? I'm doing what because that was one of the things that caused me to go after as many as I did because I saw the writing on the wall and I knew that if I wanted even one of these things because yeah, the limit's two, but if you remember in the first one they started canceling, one for orders of two to help mitigate the issue there. So if I wanted to even stand a chance at getting one of these dang things, I needed to be on top of my game. I needed to have multiples ready to go because, worst case scenario, I mean, worst case scenario, I get none. But worst case scenario, I get one and I just enjoy opening that. Best case scenario, I get one and then a surplus of others that, yes, you can flip for a profit. But again, it's the problem that the situation itself creates where you are engineering the type of behavior that's inevitable. You can't, if I didn't take part in this in the way I did, someone else was going to. It's irrelevant to say that, one group had this hand in it, one group had another hand in it. At the end of the day, if something's designed as poorly as this rollout was, it falls back on the designers. And you can't, like I said, scapegoat the people that are 1 degree separation away from seeing all those boxes get sold out and seeing the frenzy that happened. So, anyway, back to what I was saying, I like to think that I was playing, somewhat fairly because again, I wanted to get at least one and had contingencies. That was only one contingency that I had in mind of like a dozen of things that could go wrong. One of which being, you know, being able, I mean, obviously the selling out fast, which I knew was going to happen, but one of the contingencies, of course, being not knowing how many successful orders that I potentially would have placed would be canceled. So that was another reason, why I went after it in the way I did. And the other thing is, oh man, I think, yeah, I talk about it in the video that's linked in the description, but the next Mythic Edition needs to be, come at from about a couple dozen different angles differently than this one, because that's one of the things that's going to carry over from this Mythic Edition fiasco into the next, let's hope at least somewhat better rollout, because it's still, the next one's still probably going to be a trash rollout, but maybe it'll be better than this one. But the effect that's going to carry over into the next one is that mentality of people who just want the product to enjoy it. They're going to have to be thinking, okay, unless the Planeswalkers announced they're just all trash like the second one, they're going to have to think to themselves, okay, what I need to wind up doing is doing what this guy did, or what other people in general did, which was instead of buying like just 2 or 1 now, I need to get out there and have at least, 10 or 12 ready to go, trying to go after 10 of 12. So whatever disaster happens this time, I hedge my bets and have a decent chance, let's say, compared to other people that only buy in one order, let's say 1 or 2, that they have a decent chance of actually getting the thing to their doorstep. So that's going to carry over into the next one, and that's another thing that's one of the other couple of dozen things they need to be thinking out rolling into the next one is that people are going to have that mindset and act accordingly. Choose the planeswalkers accordingly, choose the print amount accordingly, and yeah, they need to be aware of that going into the next one because again, the way in which they rolled it out just was going to inevitably attract the kind of money that it did attract is going to attract that maximum flip kind of mentality because it was an interesting phenomenon if you watched what happened when all of this went down. When all of it went down and the first 12,000 sold out in 5 minutes, and then it got relisted for another 12K and then another 12K. Once it all sold out and people saw what quantities were available, um, you started seeing them getting on listed on eBay for like, you know, 450, 475, 500 because the people who were getting it just to flip started getting antsy and were concerned about the actual print numbers, and said, okay, I need to get this flipped as soon as I can so I don't, risk whatever the end result is at the end of the day. And it's funny because once Wizards came out and announced what was actually going on, that there was still only 12,000, you create actually an even more laughable situation, an even worse situation, because by coming out and announcing that and saying, you're going to get an email that either confirms or denies your order, you're actually creating another situation where the people who do actually end up getting it have even more latitude to maximize their profits and how much they can get out of it. Because once that announcement came out and the $500 Mythic Editions started getting, bought out or taken down, first of all, if you bought, Mythic Edition after that announcement, if you like went and bought the Mythic Editions to secure yourself one, you're not a smart person because like there's no way, even if that box, because nobody knew if theirs was secure or not. They had to, because every listing just said, order confirmed. Here's the, here's where it says, payment paid or payment processing or whatever. There was something in there that said like, I know I got it. I was successful in one of the 48,000 that you could check out with, and even if they were one of the ones that were actually successful and your canceled order, from a secondary person was actually legit and they, you know, got an email from eBay or a message from eBay saying, whoopsie daisy, sorry you didn't get it. Even if that happened, there's no way to know. So even, take a person who they found out were successful in getting their Mythic Edition. And they had, a Mythic Edition or two up where, they were, say, $500 and they sold. And they find out that those are actually Mythic Editions they're going to get. But then the lowest, buy it now on eBay, as everyone's, inboxes are getting, did you get it or did you not get it? And $800 is the lowest one listed. Considering the kind of people and the kind of money this attracted, do you really think literally anyone, I'd be surprised if one person actually did that and like was honest with their order, and if they sold it for 500 and actually got a confirmation, said, oh well, I sold it, so I guess I got to sell it to you. I'd be surprised if one person did that because of the type of money that it attracted. It doesn't make sense when you can make up a story to just say, like I said in my other video, oh shucks, I didn't get it. You're gonna make up a story. Granted, there's only like a 1 in 4 chance of that happening, or maybe a little bit less because people ordered multiples. Maybe a 1 in 3 chance of that happening, but you're not gonna know. So the liars and the deceivers and the flippers are just gonna get away with that. I know because I bought myself a Nicol Bolas Dragon God from this, which I touch on why in another one of my videos. And guess what? The affordable price that I got it at, the guy's just like, oh, sorry, we got an email that said our order was now canceled, so whoops-a-daisy. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't believe you. Maybe you're telling the truth, but there's no way to tell. And 30% of all of the messages that go out that say that, or all of the orders from secondary sellers that are getting canceled and having that under the reason, a third of those are complete blatant lies. Because, you don't even have to relist them on your account. You can just have someone else do it for you and have that extra separation that removes the shade factor that you would then have for doing that. So, again, it's just the type of crowd that this kind of rollout is going to attract, and the collateral damage that comes from it. And hopefully, the kind of hopefully that kind of deceit is done with now. I went ahead and made this video topic what I did for today because everyone should basically have their emails now, whether they get it or don't get it. And hopefully, now that that's happening, we'll see rollouts of items that are actually legitimately for sale, and if you pay this amount, you'll definitely get this card. Because like Jace, for example, if you went out and you bought a Jace for if you went out and you bought a Jace for 300, 350, or high 200s, no one will have, if it was cheap enough, if there's a big enough difference. Because my nickel bolus, the guy figured out he could charge $50 more probably based on the current market, and said, I'd rather do this. So, if there's a big enough gap, depending on how greedy the person is, and depending on the gap that there is between what it's sold for and what it's asking for now, chances are pretty significant that you're not going to see whatever it is you bought, whether it's a sealed one or a Jace or an Ugin or a Bolus or even one of the bad ones. There's just there's no way to really tell who's lying and who's not. So the time of the mythics that were affordable. I mean, I guess affordable is pretty. It's pretty relative anyways, because when you think about it, they were never affordable. If you're just going to have these people that can make up a story, who are getting it successfully, that can just make up a story of they're not getting it, and instead just turn around their masterpieces for $200 or so more, $200, $300 more at the end of the day, for all of them, that they're going to do it. So that's all I got for this one. To sum it up, Vintage MTG is wrong. It is completely Wizards' fault, and the fact that they didn't think this rollout through, and they didn't think of not even worst case scenarios, just likely scenarios. Like, this was a likely scenario that this would happen, and because it wasn't on their radar, because they're Blizzard Studios super excited to release Diablo Immortal for your mobile phones, because they're, Anthem and really super excited to release this looter shooter. Not only a looter shooter, but one where you can't play it unless you have, if you're on PS4, for example, and go out and rent the damn thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll just play single player, see how it is. No, you need a PSN live account. And I'm like, really? Piss off, it's single player. But anyway, if you're just, because they're like these companies making these bad decisions and just seeing the consequences from it, they join the club. They join the club of bad, unthought out, not critically explored scenarios. Because all they had to do was have a few people sit down in a room, and in less than an hour you could have discussed this, these implications of the planeswalkers you were planning on putting it in it, and the amount of print that you were gonna put out with it. But no, all they did was look at the metrics of the last rollout and said, well, we don't want that. How do we combat against this time? And they said, let's put 2 amazing planeswalkers in it, and we'll reduce the print run. And the amount of damage that did compared to their goal was just exponential in what it wound up doing for the community. So that's all I got. Wizards is at fault. You can't really blame the type of behavior that happens in a situation that you created. The way in which you decide to roll out a product, that's the situation you engineer. And to place blame anywhere else is just ignorant. That's all I got. DDR guy out.